The role of ritual in community life is extraordinary. The behavioralist, a guy by the name of Charles Duhigg, says that as much as 40%, as much as 40% of your daily behaviors are habitual. 40% of what you did today was the same stuff you did yesterday, and 40% of what you'll do tomorrow is what you did today. And I want to know, are we repeating things that grow our communities and build ourselves? Or are we repeating things that are making it harder for future generations to follow? And so our final contributor for this evening, someone extraordinary, a woman of faith, a woman of commerce and business, an entrepreneur. Please welcome Tamar Krebs.
Soon after my husband and I got married, he decided to pursue his dream and to become a rabbi. I didn't think twice about it at the time because I'm a firm believer people should pursue their dreams. I have a passion for aged care, for people living with dementia, and helping people die with dignity. So soon after we had our fourth child, I decided to pursue my own dream and to develop a new model of care in Australia for people living beyond the diagnosis of dementia. Working in aged care here and abroad, I challenged the industry. The model was going to be a small-scale home with only 6 to 10 people living in your local suburb, celebrating life. But there's so many perceptions and stigmas around people living with dementia. What they can do, what they can't do, what they should do, what they shouldn't do, where they shouldn't live, and the risk associated with it. This model was going to focus on their abilities and celebrate them. The capital raising journey turned out to be a lot more difficult than I anticipated. You see, I'm a rabbi's wife, a Rebbitzin, and there's this long-standing tradition, what Rebbitzins should do, what they shouldn't do, how Rebbitzins behave. But I struggled to fit into a box. I don't schmooze at kiddushes. I don't bake challah. Truth be told, my husband does both of them much better than I do. So with the support of my husband, I transitioned into business and to redefine what a rabbi's wife could do. I presented to any person that would listen. But at communal events, people would come up to my husband and say, "So how's the venture going? Who gave her the idea?" As if I were incapable of thinking of it myself. As we know, there are many venture capitalists in the Jewish community. And as much as I tried to stay away from them, I found myself being introduced time and time again to Jewish male venture capitalists. But I was at a disadvantage. I'm female, I was young, and a rabbi's wife. You see, before I'd walk into their room to present, I knew that they Googled me and they knew who my husband was. Because instead of getting a handshake, I'd get this awkward bow. I once presented to a room of pinstripe suits. And at the end of the presentation, the chairman turned to me and said, "Loved your presentation, but you're the risk." Naturally, I asked why. He said, "Aren't you a Rebbitzin? Don't you like to have lots of children? What happens if I invest in you and you go have more children?" That meeting didn't end very well. You see, I wear a wig. And if someone knew that I was wearing a wig when I was presenting to them, they spent the entire meeting trying to figure out where the sheitel began and end, as opposed to focusing on my eyes and listening to the content of my presentation. Very distracting. We were hosting a Shabbat dinner, and a woman turned to me and said, "So, what were your dreams before you became a rabbi's wife?" Naturally, I was confused, and I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "Well, surely you had some professional goals before you became the Rebbitzin. You're so busy, you have 4 kids, you cook, you bake." I said, "My dreams before I was a Rebbitzin and my dreams after I became a Rebbitzin are exactly the same, and that's to change the way people live with dementia." She was now confused, but that's okay. I like confused people. See, what I've learned is that our perception of others governs our behavior towards them, even if we know very little about them. I can tell you what a rabbi's wife is. It's someone that celebrates differences. It's someone that opens their heart and home to people. It's someone who's a role model. For me, it was also about holding people's hand through their end-of-life journey. My love for Judaism and God are not compromised by my love for innovation in my field. They're enhanced, and they coexist quite comfortably. When I started on this disruption journey to redefine what a rabbi's wife could do, people were antagonistic. They said it shouldn't be done, it can't be done, rabbis have rebbitzins, rebbitzins don't behave this way. But see, the way I see it, it's about celebrating what women can do, CEO, rebbitzin, or not. Identifying opportunities of inclusion for diversity and difference. Disruption happens where we dare to think differently. For me, it was doing dementia differently, helping people die differently, and being a different type of rabbi's wife. It was about pushing the boundaries of opportunities, pioneering in both worlds. And so after 62 meetings and 38 presentations, I raised the capital. We have 13 homes around Sydney and over 100 residents. What would it take for you to dare to think differently? Thank you.
I love that story. And every time I hear that story, I've been looking forward to asking you this question. Is it because you're a rabbi's wife, or is it just because it's grumpy old white men doing sexist things?
I think it's a little bit of both. No, I don't think it's because I'm female. And I don't think it's because, it's a little bit about the grumpy old men, but I do think it's about the difference. Whether it's gender difference, or whether it's religious difference, or whether it's cultural difference, I think we're very focused on seeing where we're disconnected as opposed to focusing on where we can be connected. And yeah, that's why.
And so what's the role of inclusion and the in-group and the out-group, and one of these things that helps us to identify who we are? Unfortunately, as human beings, one of the things that helps me to know who I am is to know who I'm not. And the unfortunate nature of that is that sometimes groups come to know who they are most based on who they're not. And so it's easy to exclude when a community asks us to include. What have you seen from a strong community? How do we include people into something that is a constant work in progress ourselves?
I think in the Jewish community, we actually are quite good in bringing in lots of diversity, whether it be gender diversity, whether it be different people in the community, whether it be people with disability or not disability, creating opportunities, whether it's for the younger people, the millennials, the older people. There's a lot of sense of connection. I think it's also about, you spoke about 6 degrees of separation. In the Jewish community, it's phenomenal to see. It's actually a gift how well we're connected. And I might not know you exactly, you might be a familiar stranger, but if I have someone good to introduce you to, because you're part of my community, that's a good enough reason for me to make that introduction. And people were gracious with that, with me, and I know they are with others.
Have you enjoyed Tamar's thoughts? Why don't we say thank you?
Thank you.
I've spent the better part of the last 10 years traveling the world, 1,000 nights on the road traveling internationally, maybe 65 cities, maybe 32 different countries, and having seen close up, firsthand, communities all across the planet, having studied people groups and mythology and thinking about the future and thinking about the past, I know this, and I say this with respect and honor. If you guys can't do community, then the rest of us are stuffed. Because we honor you and we look to you. And the world looks to the way that you do tribe and the way that you do faith and the way that you do community and the way that you value your own and the way that you prepare for the future and the way that you honor your past. And I do too.